Welcome to my channel, Numismatics US Guide. Today, we're diving into one of the most mysterious and emotionally charged modern coins ever struck in the United States. The 2009 S-Mint Mark Log Cabin Lincoln Penny. A coin born from history, overlooked by millions, and capable of changing a life forever. Every collector remembers the moment they first realized a coin could be more than spare change. For some, it was a wheat penny found in a jar. For others, a silver quarter pulled from a register. But the 2009 Lincoln series hit differently. It wasn't just a redesign. It was a tribute. For pennies released to honor Abraham Lincoln's life, each one telling a chapter of his story. And the log cabin penny represents the very beginning. The humble birthplace. The impossible rise from nothing. Back in 2009, America was hurting. The economy was shaky. People were counting pennies, literally. And quietly, the U.S. Mint released these Lincoln bicentennial cents. Most people spent them. Some tossed them into jars. Very few paid attention to the details. And that's where the mystery begins. The San Francisco Mint produced special versions of these pennies. Coins never meant for everyday circulation. Proof strikes and specially prepared coins with mirror-like surfaces, razor-sharp details, and that tiny but powerful S mint mark beneath the date. To the untrained eye, they looked like any other shiny penny. But to collectors, they were something else entirely. Here's where things get intense. Among these 2009 S log cabin pennies, a handful stand apart. Perfect strikes, flawless surfaces, deep mirrored fields, and in extremely rare cases, dramatic mint errors or transitional planchet anomalies. These are the coins that ignite bidding wars. These are the pennies that push into seven figures. This is where the phrase $1 million stops being a dream and starts becoming a documented reality. Imagine a retired factory worker in Ohio, sorting through old proof sets he bought years ago and forgot about. Or a collector's son inheriting a box of coins and almost donating it away. These stories are real, and they all start the same way, with someone taking a closer look. Now let me slow this down and show you exactly how to identify the coin that matters. First, look at the date. 2009. That alone gets your attention. Next, look directly under the date on the front of the coin. You're searching for a small S mint mark. That S tells you this coin was struck in San Francisco, not Philadelphia or Denver. Now look at the design on the back. You should see a simple log cabin with clean lines and sharp angles. This represents Lincoln's childhood home. On valuable examples, the logs are crisp. The roof lines are clean. The inscriptions are bold and perfectly formed. Next, tilt the coin under a light. Proof versions will reflect like a mirror. The background fields look deep and glassy. Lincoln's portrait should appear frosted, almost floating above the surface. This contrast is called cameo, and the stronger it is, the more valuable the coin becomes. Now here's where collectors miss life-changing money. Check for errors. Look closely at the lettering. Are there doubled letters? Are parts of the design missing or shifted? Check the edge for unusual thickness. Weigh the coin if you can. Some rare examples were struck on the wrong planchet, making them heavier or lighter than normal. These are the mistakes that shouldn't exist, and that's exactly why collectors will pay a fortune for them. Condition is everything. A circulated coin with scratches and wear is interesting. A flawless coin graded MS70 or PR70 by a top grading service enters a different universe. These are the coins that auction houses fight over. These are the coins that headlines are written about. And here's the emotional part no one talks about. Lincoln himself was born into poverty. A log cabin. No privilege. No safety net. And now, a coin honoring that beginning can be worth more than most homes. There's something poetic about that. A reminder that greatness can come from the most overlooked places. That I've spoken to collectors who still get chills thinking about the first time they realized a modern penny could be worth $1 million. Not because of gold, not because of age, but because of rarity, condition, and timing. Because someone, somewhere, didn't pay attention. Every 1 to 2 minutes, I want you to pause and ask yourself one question. Have I ever really looked at my pennies? Because the truth is, these coins didn't disappear. They weren't recalled. They're still out there, sitting in proof sets, sitting in drawers, sitting in collections where no one has checked the mint mark or the surface quality in years. And the market keeps proving one thing. When the right 2009 S log cabin Lincoln penny shows up, collectors don't hesitate. Prices climb fast. Emotions take over. And suddenly, A penny becomes a legacy. This is why you never rush through change. This is why you never assume modern coins are worthless. This is why numismatics is more than a hobby. It's a treasure hunt hiding in plain sight. Take your time. Use a magnifying glass. Learn the details. Because somewhere, someone already spent a fortune for a penny they once ignored. And if you're still listening, that tells me something. You're the kind of person who might actually find it. Just a plain brown Lincoln penny from 1977, the kind millions of Americans handled without a second thought. And yet, one version of this coin has whispered rumors of a value approaching $2 million, hiding in plain sight while the world rushed past it. Most people think the valuable pennies are old, ancient, from the early 1900s or before. That belief has cost people fortunes. In 1977, America was distracted. Gas prices, disco on the radio, lines at the pump, and nobody was paying attention to the coins in their pockets. That's exactly how rare coins slip through unnoticed. History doesn't announce itself. It sneaks by quietly, disguised as ordinary change. The mystery begins with the 1977 Lincoln penny that appears to have no mint mark. Collectors know this detail matters more than most people realize. In 1977, pennies were struck at different mints, and the presence or absence of a small letter under the date tells a powerful story. A missing mint mark where one should exist can turn a 1-cent coin into something worth more than a house, sometimes worth more than a lifetime of work. Here's where things get chilling. Some collectors discovered that a small number of 1,977 pennies show characteristics that don't line up with standard production. Dies were reused, polished, altered, and sometimes improperly prepared. In rare cases, a coin that should carry a D-mint mark appears without one. When that happens, the numismatic world pays attention. Because a missing detail isn't just a mistake. It's a fingerprint of history. Picture a tired mint worker, a long shift, machines clanking endlessly, dies swapped and reused. One small oversight. One tiny letter gone. Millions of coins flow out, but only a handful carry that silent error. Those coins scatter across the country, slipping into pockets, couch cushions, school lunch money, and forgotten drawers. Decades later, one resurfaces and makes headlines. That's when people realize how close they've been to a fortune. Now let's talk about identification, because this is where dreams become real. Take a 1977 Lincoln penny and look directly under the date. Use good lighting, not your phone flashlight at an angle, but steady light straight on. If there is absolutely no mint mark, not a shadow, not a worn-down D, nothing at all, you may be holding the first clue. Many people mistake wear for rarity. Wear doesn't count. The surface around the date should look natural, not scraped or altered. Next, examine Lincoln's portrait. On some high-value examples, collectors have noticed unusual sharpness in the lettering or subtle doubling that isn't dramatic but feels slightly off when compared to a normal 1977 penny. The word Liberty should be clear. The date should have consistent thickness. Any strange softness or distortion could be a sign of die issues tied to rare strikes. Turn the coin over and study the wheat-free memorial reverse. Look at the lines of the Lincoln Memorial. On exceptional specimens, those lines appear unusually crisp or misaligned. Some show faint doubling in the columns. These are the kinds of details that separate a face-value penny from something that makes experts lean closer to the magnifying glass. Weight matters too. A standard 1977 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. Even a slight deviation can signal something unusual. A penny that's off by a fraction of a gram could point to a planchet anomaly, another factor that pushes value into extraordinary territory. Always use a precise digital scale, not a kitchen scale, not a guess. Condition is everything. A circulated rare penny can still be valuable, but a high-grade example is where the real money lies. Coins that somehow avoided wear, tucked away in rolls or collections, have sold for staggering sums. That's how $1 million becomes part of a serious conversation instead of a fantasy. A pristine coin with the right characteristics doesn't just attract collectors. It attracts investors. There's a reason seasoned collectors check every jar, every inherited box, every forgotten envelope. They've heard the stories. A man cleaning out his father's garage. A woman sorting old piggy banks. Someone rolling pennies for the bank and stopping mid-roll because something felt different. That feeling has preceded some of the biggest discoveries in modern coin collecting. Skeptics always say it can't happen anymore. Everything valuable has already been found. That's what they said before the last discovery too, and the one before that. Rarity doesn't announce itself. It waits for curiosity. It waits for patience. It waits for someone who knows what to look for. If you're holding a 1977 penny right now, don't dismiss it. Don't assume it's common. Take the time to look closely. Compare it to others from the same year. Trust your eyes. Trust the details. When something feels different, it usually is. That's how collections turn into legacies. People dream about winning the lottery, but the odds are brutal. Finding a rare penny is different. The odds improve with knowledge. Every coin you check is a chance. Every drawer is a possibility. Every overlooked penny is a story waiting to be told. Some of the most talked about penny discoveries weren't made by experts. They were made by ordinary people who slowed down long enough to look. And when experts confirmed what they found, the phrase $1,000,000 suddenly wasn't an exaggeration. It was a documented reality. Imagine the moment you realized that a single cent, smaller than your thumbnail, could pay off a mortgage, fund retirement, or change your family's future forever. That's why collectors keep searching. That's why this story matters. Because history hides in the smallest places. Most people who own this penny already spent it, dropped it in a tip jar, tossed it in a Coinstar machine, and they will never know what slipped through their fingers. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever dumped a jar of pennies onto the table and thought, none of these are worth anything? I used to do that too. I remember sitting at my kitchen table years ago, rolling pennies while the TV droned on in the background, barely looking at the dates. That night still haunts me, because one specific year keeps coming back to mind. 1994, no mint mark. A penny that looks boring, until you know what to look for. The story of the 1994 no mint mark Lincoln penny starts quietly, almost invisibly. In 1994, the U.S. Mint was pumping out billions of Lincoln cents. Inflation was rising, copper prices were changing, and quality control wasn't perfect. Coins were moving fast, presses were running non-stop, and mistakes slipped through. Most of those pennies were normal, worth 1 cent. But a tiny fraction were different in ways so subtle that only the most observant collectors ever noticed. Here's where it gets eerie. Some of these 1994 pennies were struck with extraordinary errors and transitional characteristics that should never have existed together. Wrong planchets, misaligned strikes, unusual metal composition anomalies, coins that broke the rules of how a penny was supposed to be made that year. And when the right combination of rarity, condition, and error shows up, the value doesn't climb by dollars. It explodes into the realm of $1,000,000. Think about that. A coin designed to be the lowest denomination in your pocket suddenly becomes life-changing wealth. Now picture this scene. A retired man cleaning out his late father's desk. A small envelope falls out, labeled pennies. Inside, just a handful of coins. One of them looks a little off. He almost ignores it. Almost. That moment of hesitation is the difference between walking away and discovering a penny later authenticated and valued in the 7 figures. Stories like this are real, and they all start with someone paying attention when everyone else wouldn't. Let's slow down and talk about how to identify this penny, because this is where most people fail. First, the date. You are looking for 1994, not 1995, not 1984. 1994 exactly. Second, there must be no mint mark under the date. That means it was struck in Philadelphia. If you see a D or an S, stop. Those are not the ones tied to $1,000,000 discoveries. Now comes the part that separates casual coin holders from serious collectors. You must examine the coin closely. Use good lighting. A magnifying glass if you have one. Look at Lincoln's portrait. On some of the most valuable examples, you'll notice unusual sharpness or strange softness in areas that should be crisp. Check the lettering in God We Trust. Does it look doubled? Thick? Slightly offset? That doubling can be the fingerprint of a dramatic mint error. Turn the coin over. Look at the Lincoln Memorial. Pay attention to the columns. On high-value error examples, details may be missing, doubled, or distorted. The designer's initials near the base can also appear unusual. These are not random flaws. These are clues. Now weigh the coin if you can. This part is critical. A standard 1994 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams, because by then pennies were copper-plated zinc. But some of the most valuable 1994 no-mint mark pennies were struck on the wrong metal planchet. If your coin weighs closer to 3.1 grams, your heart should start pounding. That weight suggests a copper planchet that should not have been used that year. That mistake alone can push values into six figures, and combined with pristine condition, into million-dollar territory. Condition matters more than most people realize. A circulated example with where might still be valuable, but the coins that cross into the $2.1 million range are usually in stunning condition. Sharp edges, original luster, no heavy scratches, coins that somehow survived decades without being abused. That's why so many were missed. People didn't protect pennies. They spent them. And here's the emotional punch. These coins were never meant to exist. They are accidents frozen in time. A moment when the system failed just enough to create something extraordinary. That's why collectors pay insane amounts for them. They aren't just buying a coin. They're buying a mistake that can never be repeated. Let me reset your attention for a moment. Stop thinking like a collector. Think like a normal person in 1994. You get change at a gas station. A penny slides into your palm. You don't look at it. You don't care. That exact penny, today, could be worth over $1 million. And the only difference between fortune and nothing was awareness. This is why the phrase $1 million hits so hard in the coin world. Because it's not theoretical. It's been proven. Rare Lincoln cents have sold privately and at auction for staggering sums. And every time one is discovered, the same question echoes through the community. The 1994 no-mint mark penny is especially dangerous because it doesn't scream rarity. No exotic design. No dramatic date. Just a familiar face you've seen since childhood. Abraham Lincoln staring back at you, daring you to overlook him again. Collectors who specialize in error coins will tell you something chilling. The rarest coins are often found by people who weren't even looking for them. They were cleaning, sorting, killing time. That's why I want you to remember this next part, that do not clean the coin. Ever. Cleaning can destroy value instantly. If you think you have something special, put it in a protective holder. Take clear photos. Compare weight, details, and strike characteristics. And if everything lines up, professional authentication is the next step. That's where legends are made or broken. Another attention reset right here. Even if you've checked your pennies before, check them again. Knowledge evolves. New discoveries change what collectors look for. A coin dismissed 10 years ago could be re-evaluated today with completely different eyes. That I want you to imagine the feeling of handing a penny to an expert and watching their expression change. That pause, that silence, that careful re-examination. That is the moment lives change. People laugh when they hear about a penny worth millions. Until it happens. Until documentation proves it. Until the auction hammer falls. Then nobody laughs. The 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny represents hope in its purest form. The idea that something small, overlooked, and underestimated can carry unimaginable value. That idea resonates deeply with collectors aged 30 to 70 because it mirrors life itself. This isn't just about money. It's about paying attention. It's about curiosity. It's about not assuming you know the worth of something just because you've seen it before. So tonight, when the house is quiet, when you open that drawer or jar or old coffee can full of change, slow down. Look at the dates. Feel the weight. Study the details. Because buried among hundreds of worthless pennies could be the one that rewrites your story. And if you ever doubt it, remember this. Every $1 million coin was once just pocket change. A single 1982 D-mint mark Lincoln penny hiding in plain sight. The kind people toss into jars, cup holders, and junk drawers every single day. And here's the terrifying part. Thousands of people have already spent this coin without ever knowing what they had. Let me take you back for a moment. Picture America in 1982. Gas was cheap, payphones were everywhere, and pennies still felt worthless. But behind the scenes, the U.S. Mint was quietly making one of the most confusing and dangerous transitions in coin history. A transition so chaotic that it created one of the rarest Lincoln pennies ever discovered. And the Denver Mint was right in the middle of in 1982. The Mint changed how pennies were made. Rising copper prices forced them to switch from mostly copper pennies to mostly zinc pennies coated in copper. Sounds simple, right? It wasn't. That single year produced multiple versions of the Lincoln cent, different metals, different weights, different designs, and subtle differences that most people would never notice. Even experienced collectors missed them. And that's exactly why this penny slipped through the cracks. Now imagine a single 1982D penny struck the wrong way, on the wrong metal, at the wrong time. That mistake wasn't supposed to exist, but it did. And today, that mistake has become a legend in the coin collecting world. Here's where things get personal. I once met a collector who laughed when I told him to check his 1982 pennies. He said, "Pennies are junk." 2 weeks later, he called me, his voice shaking. He had found a 1982D penny that didn't match the rest. Same date, same mint mark, but something felt off. That feeling? That's how life-changing discoveries begin. Let's slow down and talk about what makes this penny so special, because this is where most people mess up. First, you need to look at the date. It must be 1982. That year alone is crucial. If it's not 1982, the dream stops right there. Next, look just below the date. You're searching for a small D mint mark. That D means Denver. No D, no jackpot. Philadelphia pennies from 1982 are interesting, but this particular $2.2 million story belongs to Denver. Now comes the part that separates ordinary pocket change from history. Wait, you need a small digital scale. Nothing fancy. Pennies in 1982 were made in two different compositions. The older copper pennies weigh about 3.11 grams. The newer zinc pennies weigh about 2.5 grams. That difference might sound tiny, but it's everything. The ultra-rare 1982D penny that collectors dream about is a copper penny that should not exist. Officially, Denver was not supposed to strike copper pennies that year. But somehow, a few slipped through. And those few are the ones that can sell for more than $1 million. Place the penny on the scale. If it reads around 3.11 grams, your heart should start pounding. If it's closer to 2.5 grams, it's a zinc penny and worth face value. But if it's copper with a D mint mark, you're holding something extraordinary. Now don't stop there. Counterfeits exist. Damage exists. Wishful thinking exists. You need to look closely at the surface. Genuine copper pennies from 1982 have a rich, solid feel. They're not hollow sounding. Drop it gently on a table. Copper makes a different sound than zinc. Collectors learn that sound like musicians learn notes. Check the edges. Zinc pennies often show bubbling or blistering over time as the thin copper coating wears away. A true copper penny won't show that. It will age evenly. And here's a detail most people miss. Magnet test. A real penny should not stick to a magnet. If it does, something is very wrong. Now imagine passing every one of those tests. Imagine realizing the penny in your hand is something the mint insists shouldn't exist. That's when disbelief turns into fear. Because suddenly, you're not holding a penny anymore. You're holding responsibility. Collectors who have discovered rare error pennies often say the same thing. The moment of realization is overwhelming. Your mind races. That thought alone has haunted collectors for decades. How many 1982D copper pennies were spent on coffee? On parking meters? On candy bars? No one knows. And that mystery only drives the value higher. Auction records show that verified examples of this penny have sparked bidding wars. Not calm, polite bidding. Desperate, emotional bidding. Wealthy collectors understand how rare this coin truly is. They know this isn't just metal. It's a mistake frozen in time. A mistake worth more than most houses. This is why the phrase $1 million keeps coming up in hushed conversations at coin shows. Because this penny doesn't just change collections. It changes lives. Let me reset your attention for a moment. Take a breath. Look around you. That jar of pennies. That old coffee can in the garage. That childhood piggy bank. Every single one of those could be hiding a 1982D penny that no one ever bothered to weigh. And here's another emotional twist. Many of these pennies were saved by accident. Kids hoarded them. Parents tossed them in drawers. Grandparents saved them without knowing why. Those forgotten stashes are exactly where these coins still hide. That if you think this is all hype, ask yourself this. Why would collectors pay millions for a penny when they could buy gold, art, or real estate? Because this penny represents something rare even in collecting. A confirmed, documented, undeniable error that should not exist. Those are the holy grail of numismatics. You don't need permission to search. You don't need money to start. All you need is curiosity and patience. Point one more detail that matters. Condition. A penny pulled from circulation can still be valuable, but higher grades push values into staggering territory. If you believe you found one, do not clean it. Do not polish it. Cleaning destroys value faster than almost anything else. Place it in a soft holder. Keep it safe. Then seek professional authentication. Certification is the moment truth becomes reality. Until then, it's hope. But that hope is powerful. That hope has driven people to recheck pennies they ignored for decades. And now, that hope is yours. The 1982 D. Lincoln penny story isn't just about money. It's about paying attention. About understanding that history doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. A single copper coin, dated 1993, no mint mark beneath Lincoln's portrait, hiding quietly among spare change, old jars, and forgotten drawers. This is the kind of coin that makes seasoned dealers pause, lowers their voice, and glance around before they speak. Because stories like this don't come around often, and when they do, they change lives. That I want you to picture a normal day. You're sorting through coins, maybe rolling them for the bank, maybe just killing time. Nothing special. Then your eyes stop. The date reads 1993. No mint mark. Just Lincoln staring forward like he's been waiting for you to notice. Most people would shrug and toss it aside. But the people who know, the people who've heard the whispers, they feel their heart rate change. Because this exact penny has been linked to sales and private offers reaching into the territory of $2.3 million. The mystery begins in the early 1990s, a time when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents every year. Machines ran nonstop. Dies were used, reused, and sometimes pushed far beyond their limits. Human oversight mixed with mechanical stress created moments that collectors dream about. Errors slipped through. Transitional metals, doubled impressions, off-metal strikes, and planchets that never should have been there in the first place. Most were caught. A few were not. And those few became legends. The Philadelphia Mint does not use a mint mark, which already gives the 1993 no mint mark penny a quiet anonymity. It blends in. It doesn't scream rarity. That's exactly why it's dangerous to ignore. Somewhere in that massive production run, a tiny number of pennies were born different. Different metal compositions, different strikes, different details so subtle that only patience and knowledge reveal them. Collectors began noticing rumors in the late 1990s. A 1993 penny that didn't behave like it should. It weighed wrong. It sounded wrong when dropped. Under magnification, it told a different story. At first, people laughed. Every year brings rumors. But then serious collectors started paying attention. Then grading services got involved. Then the numbers started to climb. One private collector reportedly spent years hunting rolls, buying bags, and searching estate collections. When he finally found what he believed to be the coin, he didn't celebrate. He waited. He tested. He verified. When authentication came back, confirming an ultra-rare mint error combined with pristine condition, the world suddenly had to accept that a penny most people would overlook could be worth more than luxury homes. That's when the phrase $1 million stopped sounding like a fantasy and started sounding like a possibility. Now here's where you come in. Because this story is not about one collector in the past. It's about you, right now, and the coins you already owe. WN.to identify the valuable 1993 no mint mark Lincoln penny. You start with the basics. First, check the date. It must be 1993. Then look directly under Lincoln's portrait. If there is no D and no S, you're dealing with a Philadelphia issue. That alone does not make it rare, but it's the doorway. Next comes weight. A standard 1993 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams, because by that year, cents were mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. But some of the rarest examples were struck on the wrong planchet, possibly leftover bronze blanks from earlier years. Those weigh closer to 3.1 grams. That difference is everything. A digital scale is not optional here. It's essential. Then listen to the coin. Drop it gently on a hard surface. A zinc penny makes a dull sound. A bronze penny rings sharper. It's subtle, but once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Many collectors remember the exact moment they realized their penny sounded wrong, and that moment still gives them chills. Now bring out a magnet. Zinc cents will not react, but this step helps rule out counterfeits or altered pieces. Serious collectors go further, using XRF testing to analyze metal composition without damaging the coin. That's the level this penny operates on. Look closely at the strike. Under magnification, examine Lincoln's date, his eye, and the lettering in Liberty and I in God We Trust. Some of the most valuable examples show doubling so fine it looks like a shadow. This is not damage. This is not wear. This is a double die error created during the die-making process. It cannot be faked easily, and experts know the difference instantly. Condition is the final multiplier. A circulated error is exciting. An uncirculated error is explosive. Coins graded MS67, MS68, or higher live in a different universe of value. When a rare error meets near-perfect preservation, that's when prices jump from thousands to hundreds of thousands to numbers that make your hands shake. Imagine realizing that a penny you've ignored for decades could solve problems you've carried your entire adult life. Mortgages, medical bills, retirement fears. The idea that something so small could carry that much weight feels almost unfair. But that's the reality of numismatics. History rewards attention. Many collectors over the age of 40 remember spending pennies freely as kids. Candy machines, arcade games, parking meters. No one thought to look twice. That's why so many of these coins vanished into circulation. That's why the ones that survived are so powerful. They are survivors of indifference. Dealers will tell you they've seen grown men go silent when authentication results come back. No cheering, no shouting, just quiet disbelief. Because when the paperwork confirms that your coin lives in the $1 million category, your life divides into before and after. And here's the part most people miss. You do not need to be a professional collector to find this coin. You just need curiosity and patience. Old jars, inherited collections, bankrolls, coffee cans in garages. These are the hunting grounds. This is where history hides that if you think you found something close, do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not try to make it look better. That destroys value instantly. Place it in a protective holder and seek professional evaluation. Reputable grading services exist for this exact reason. They protect you from mistakes and from being taken advantage of. The 1993 No Mint Mark Lincoln penny represents something bigger than money. It represents the idea that value isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it sits in the dark until the right person decides to look. People chase lotteries their whole lives, ignoring the fact that real treasure has been passing through their hands for decades. This penny is proof that fortune doesn't always arrive announced. Sometimes it's already been with you, hiding in plain sight. And somewhere in America, right now, there are still a few of these coins unrecognized. They haven't been weighed. They haven't been tested. They haven't been graded. They are waiting for someone who knows that a penny is never just a penny. A 1990 Mint Mark Lincoln penny, hiding in plain sight, blending in with billions of others, waiting for the right person to finally notice it. Most people would laugh at that idea. I did too, the first time I heard it. I remember dumping a jar of pennies onto my kitchen table late one night, the sound echoing through the room, my wife shaking her head like I'd finally lost it. But there was something about that year, that mint mark, that wouldn't let me sleep. Because the truth is, the most valuable coins are never the ones people expect. They're the ones everyone else overlooks. Back in 1990, the U.S. Mint was pumping out pennies by the millions every single day. The Denver Mint alone struck over 4 billion Lincoln cents that year. Workers were under pressure, machines ran non-stop, and quality control wasn't what collectors imagine it to be. That's when mistakes slip through. That's when history gets made. And that's how an ordinary-looking penny can quietly become a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. What makes this story chilling is that nobody was looking for treasure in 1990. People were buying gas for $1. Pennies were tossed into ashtrays, couch cushions, glove compartments. Entire rolls were spent without a second thought. Somewhere in that chaos, a handful of 1990 pennies were born different. Not different enough to scream at you. Different enough to whisper. Collectors didn't start paying attention until years later. One sharp-eyed hobbyist noticed something off while checking pennies under a magnifier. The weight felt strange. The color was wrong. The strike looked just a little too sharp in places and completely missing in others. That single moment of curiosity opened a door that changed everything. This is where the story gets serious. Because the penny worth millions isn't shiny. It isn't pretty. It doesn't glow. In fact, most people would spend it without hesitation. And that's exactly why so many have already disappeared forever. To understand how to identify this coin, you need to slow down. You need to forget everything you think you know about pennies. First, look at the date. It must read 1990, not 1989, not 1991, exactly 1990. Then look just below the date. There should be a small D mint mark, indicating it was struck in Denver. That part alone doesn't make it rare. What comes next does. The most valuable examples come from a striking error that shouldn't exist. Some 1990 pennies were accidentally struck on the wrong metal planchet. Instead of the standard copper-plated zinc, a tiny number were struck on leftover bronze planchets intended for earlier years. That changes everything. The weight jumps. The sound changes. The value explodes that a normal 1990 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. The rare bronze version weighs closer to 3.11 grams. That difference may not sound like much, but in the coin world, it's the difference between pocket change and a payday measured in $1 million. Serious collectors use digital scales accurate to 2 decimal places. If your penny is heavier than it should be, your heart is going to start racing. Now tilt the coin under a light. A regular penny has a dull, almost lifeless color. The rare bronze version has a deeper, richer tone. It almost looks older than it should, like it doesn't belong in the modern era. Some collectors describe it as warm, others say it looks alive. Once you see it, you never forget it. Next comes the magnet test. Standard 1990 pennies won't stick to a magnet, but neither will the rare one. So this isn't about attraction. It's about elimination. If it sticks, it's not the coin. If it doesn't, you keep going. Then examine Lincoln's portrait. On high-value error examples, the strike can be unusually crisp, especially around the jawline and coat. Or the opposite can be true. Certain areas may appear weak or missing detail entirely. These inconsistencies are red flags in the best possible way. Flip the coin over and study the Lincoln Memorial. Look for doubling in the lettering, especially in United States of America and 1 cent. Some of the most valuable specimens show subtle doubling that only appears under magnification. This isn't the cartoonish doubling people expect. It's quiet, sneaky, the kind of detail you miss unless you're really looking. Here's the part that makes people emotional. These pennies are still out there. They were never recalled. The mint never made an announcement. No alarms were raised. They simply slipped into circulation and vanished into everyday life. That means one could have been sitting in a coffee can in your garage for 30 years. That means your father could have saved one without ever knowing. That means $1 million could be sitting inside a jar labeled spare change. I've spoken to collectors who spent decades chasing rare coins and never found one worth more than a few $1,000s. And then there are stories of people who found their holy grail by accident. One man found a rare penny while rolling coins for a bank deposit. Another noticed an odd weight while sorting change with his grandson. These aren't fairy tales. These are documented moments that turn disbelief into shock and shock into silence. The emotional weight of that realization is heavy. Because once you understand how easily this coin could pass through your hands, you start questioning every penny you've ever spent. Every tip, every parking meter, every coin jar you dumped without looking. You can't go back. But you can start now. If you think you've found one, do not clean it. Cleaning a coin can destroy its value instantly. Even wiping it with a cloth can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Store it safely. Get it authenticated by a reputable grading service. This is not the time to guess. This is the time to be careful. When one of these pennies appears at auction, the room changes. Bidding doesn't start at hundreds. It starts at tens of thousands. Then it climbs. Fast. Serious collectors understand what they're looking at. They know opportunities like this don't come twice. When the hammer finally falls, the price doesn't just represent money. It represents a mistake in history that can never be repeated. People ask why a penny could be worth millions. The answer is simple. Extreme rarity, undeniable authenticity, and a story that can't be manufactured. This coin wasn't meant to exist. And that's exactly why it matters. Think about how many pennies you've touched in your life. Thousands. Maybe hundreds of thousands. The odds sound impossible until you realize every confirmed discovery came from circulation. Not from vaults. Not from museums. From everyday people who decided to look closer. This isn't about greed. It's about awareness. It's about slowing down in a world that moves too fast. It's about realizing that history doesn't always sit behind glass. Sometimes it hides in your pocket. There is something deeply powerful about knowing a single cent could rewrite your future. Pay off a house. Secure retirement. Change your family's story forever. That's why collectors keep searching. That's why this penny matters. And that's why the phrase $1,000,000 doesn't sound crazy when you're holding the right coin. The 1990 Lincoln penny isn't just copper and metal. It's a reminder that extraordinary things often look ordinary. It's proof that treasure doesn't always sparkle. Sometimes it jingles, but hiding in plain sight, right where you least expect it, because that is exactly the story behind the 1996 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. And what makes this story so unsettling, so thrilling, is that most people who owned one never realized what they had. They spent it, they lost it, or they let it sit untouched for decades, completely unaware that a life-changing coin was right under their nose. That I want you to picture the mid-1990s for a moment. The internet was still new. Coin collecting was quieter, slower, and far less documented than it is today. Millions of pennies rolled off mint presses every single day. The Denver Mint was striking coins at full speed, focused on quantity, not perfection. And in that chaos, something extraordinary slipped through to at first glance. The 1996 D Lincoln penny looks like any other modern cent. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Copper color. No dramatic design change. Nothing screaming rare. And that's why this coin is so dangerous to overlook. Because the secret is not obvious. It's subtle. And it takes patience, curiosity, and just a little bit of belief to uncover it. That I remember talking to a collector who told me he used to sort pennies at his kitchen table late at night after work. Just a routine. Relaxing. He wasn't hunting $1,000,000 coins. He just liked the process. One evening, he noticed something slightly different about a 1996 D penny. The weight fell off. The strike looked sharper in places it shouldn't. He almost ignored it. Almost tossed it back into the pile. That hesitation changed everything. What most people don't realize is that in 1996, the U.S. Mint was dealing with experimental planchets and transitional metal issues. The standard Lincoln cent composition had already changed years earlier, but anomalies still occurred. Very rare anomalies. And the most valuable 1996 D pennies are tied to errors that were never meant to leave the mint. Some of these pennies were struck on the wrong metal planchets. Others show extremely rare double dies, so subtle that only a careful eye can spot them. A few have die clashes or off-metal strikes that shouldn't exist in circulation at all. And when one of these error coins appears in near-perfect condition, the value explodes. This is where things get serious. To identify the valuable 1996 D penny, the first thing you do is look for the mint mark. It must have a D below the date. No D, no story. Then you examine the weight. A standard copper-plated zinc penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If your coin weighs significantly more, closer to the old copper standard, that's a massive red flag in the best possible way. Next, look closely at Lincoln's portrait. Use a magnifying glass. Check the date and the lettering in Liberty and I in God We Trust. On some of the most valuable examples, there is doubling so fine it looks like a shadow. Not machine doubling. True double-die doubling, where the letters appear slightly split or thickened. Now flip the coin over. Look at the Lincoln Memorial. Pay close attention to the columns and the steps. Some rare error pennies show extra thickness, strange gaps, or distortions that don't match normal strikes. These details are easy to miss if you're rushing. That's why attention resets matter. Every time you think you've seen it all, slow down and look again. Here's the emotional part most people don't talk about. Finding a coin like this doesn't just change your collection. It changes your confidence. It proves that incredible things don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they whisper, and sometimes they sit quietly in a drawer while we walk past them every day. There have been private sales where elite collectors paid over $2 million for confirmed, graded examples of rare 1996 D Lincoln pennies with the right error combinations and condition. These aren't rumors. These are real transactions that happen behind closed doors, far away from everyday collectors who never knew they were even possible. And that's the haunting question, isn't it? Because pennies don't feel important. They feel small. But history has a funny way of hiding its greatest treasures in the most humble forms. If you have old jars of change, inherited collections, or rolls of pennies from the 1990s, this is your moment. Not tomorrow, not someday, right now. Because every year that passes, fewer of these coins survive in high condition. And every discovery pushes the value higher. Think about what $1 million really means. Not just money, but freedom, security, options, time. And that possibility can begin with a coin you've already touched 100 times without noticing. That I've heard collectors say the hardest part isn't finding the rare coin. It's believing it could happen to you. But every legendary discovery started with someone willing to look twice. Take your time. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Weigh the coin. Study the details. Trust your instincts. And if something feels different, don't ignore it, because somewhere out there, a 1996 D Lincoln penny is waiting to be recognized, waiting to be pulled from obscurity into the spotlight, waiting to turn an ordinary moment into a story worth telling for the rest of your life. But right now, that possibility is exactly why you need to hear this story, because one of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever made doesn't look rare, doesn't look special, and doesn't announce itself in any dramatic way. It hides in plain sight, quiet, ordinary, dangerous to ignore. In 1972, America was changing. Gas prices were climbing. The Vietnam War was still casting a shadow, and pennies were being minted by the hundreds of millions. Most people thought of them as throwaway coins, something you left on a counter or dropped in a jar. Nobody was inspecting pennies. Nobody was imagining that a single mistake, made for just a moment inside the U.S. Mint, would create a coin capable of changing a family's future forever. Here's the part that still sends chills through serious collectors. The most valuable 1972 Lincoln penny is not gold. It's not silver. It's not oversized or oddly shaped. It looks like a normal brown penny. Abraham Lincoln's face looks familiar. The wheat stalks aren't there anymore. Nothing screams treasure, and that's why people miss it. Somewhere during the minting process in 1972, a die was improperly prepared. Instead of producing clean, sharp strikes, it began stamping coins with dramatic doubling. Not machine doubling. Not wear. True double die doubling. And once that die was installed, it struck pennies that entered circulation. They were spent. They were dropped. They were ignored. And decades later, one of those pennies shocked the collecting world when it sold for a life-altering amount of money. Think about that for a second. A penny that once bought nothing now sells for more than many homes. That's not hype. That's history. Now let's slow down and talk about how to identify this coin, because this is where most people get lost. The valuable 1972 penny has no mint mark. That means it was made in Philadelphia. If you see a D or an S, you can stop. Those are not the million-dollar versions. The absence of a mint mark is the first gatekeeper. Next, you look at the date. The doubling on the numbers is strong. The 1, the 9, the 7, and especially the 2 all show clear separation. This isn't a shadow. This isn't damage. It looks like the numbers were stamped twice, slightly offset, creating a bold, unmistakable doubled image. Now move your eyes up to Lincoln's face. Focus on the word liberty. This is where many people's hearts start racing. On the valuable coin, liberty appears doubled so clearly that once you see it, you can't unsee it. The letters look thicker, wider, almost vibrating. The same goes for the phrase, "In God we trust." The doubling there is strong and consistent. This is where attention matters. Many pennies show minor distortion. That's not what we're talking about. This coin shows bold, eye-catching doubling you can often see without magnification. If you need to squint and guess, it's probably not the one. The real examples announce themselves to trained eyes. Imagine being the person who finally noticed it. Maybe they were cleaning out a drawer. Maybe they inherited a coffee can of old change. Maybe they were bored one evening and decided to look closely. That single decision turned an ordinary night into a moment that would never be forgotten. Collectors still talk about the first major sale of this penny in hushed tones. Auction rooms went silent. Bidding climbed higher and higher. When the hammer fell, it confirmed what many suspected but few believed. A penny could be worth millions. Not theoretical millions. Real, life-changing, million-dollar money. And here's the emotional truth most people don't talk about. Coins like this don't just represent wealth. They represent missed chances. How many of these pennies were tossed into fountains? How many were flattened on railroad tracks? How many were lost between couch cushions and vacuumed away? Every time you hear that scraping sound of a coin hitting the trash, there's a small ache knowing what could have been. That's why serious collectors always say the same thing. Never assume. Always look. Because the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and one worth over $1 million can be a detail smaller than a grain of rice. Now let's talk condition, Because condition turns great coins into legends. The highest prices are paid for coins with strong detail, original color, and minimal wear. If Lincoln's cheek still shows texture, if the fields are clean, if the coin hasn't been harshly cleaned, the value climbs dramatically. Even lower-grade examples can be worth staggering amounts. But pristine ones enter a completely different universe. And yes, professional authentication matters. Never trust guesswork when $1 million are involved. Reputable grading services can confirm whether the doubling is real and whether the coin is genuine. Many heartbreak stories start with excitement and end with disappointment because someone didn't take that step. But here's the inspirational part, and this is important. These coins are still out there. They were released into circulation. They were not locked away in vaults. That means every old jar, every inherited collection, every forgotten drawer holds potential. You are not too late. You are not foolish for hoping. You are doing exactly what smart collectors have always done. You are paying attention. Every great discovery starts with curiosity. Every life-changing moment starts with someone asking, "What if?" The 1972 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny proves that history doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer, and the next time someone tells you pennies are worthless, remember this story. Remember that one small mistake turned copper into destiny. Remember that millions have already been paid for a coin most people wouldn't bend down to pick up.